To recap, Pascal and I have ridden over 1,500 kilometers in 2 weeks across parts of Germany, France, Switzerland, Italy and Austria. In Lienz, we decided to split ways as I wanted to continue riding across southeastern Europe. I still didn't know what my final destination was gonna be, but I was toying with the idea of riding all the way to Moldova, because if I headed straight to Budapest, then the trip would be over too short and too similar to what I've done before. But cycling to Moldova, that's something different. I was recommended to sleep at the White Lake, but because it was too early to stop, I decided to continue riding towards Slovenia. At the entrance of a small village before the border, I found a small cabin, which looked as if it hadn't been used in some time. I took my chances and decided to wall camp next to it, hidden from the road by tall trees. I woke up several times during the night, partly because I was freezing, and partly because I was still a bit scared of being discovered. But it was worth it. Every time I looked up in the sky, I saw a million stars. I woke up at 5 o'clock, just as the sun was rising, and headed across the border. I've always wanted to climb the Vršac Pass, one of the most famous roads of Slovenia, and today was the day. The road has 50 hairpins, and each one of them is numbered, so I could slowly check my progress. Russian prisoners of war built this mountain pass during the First World War, and a few years ago it got renamed as the Russian Road to remember the 300 plus people who perished building it due to the grueling conditions and an avalanche in 1916. On the other side of the mountain, I found once again my favorite river in Slovenia, the Soča. There are so many gems in this valley that look simply incredible. I didn't miss the chance to take detours and explore more the surroundings. Shortly after, I met Eugene, a Berliner who has been riding trips like mine every summer for the last 20 years. It was fun to share lunch and stories until we eventually split ways later the same day. Everybody knows how wonderful the Croatian coast is, but since I chose to head to Moldova, I went towards the mainland rather than the famous coast. Unfortunately, mainland Croatia didn't sit well with me. I found myself riding through countless villages that were filled with half-built or abandoned homes, some left for so long that trees started to grow inside. And with the 45 degrees weather, I felt like I was in no man's land. Thank goodness for alcohol-free beer though. The next day, I woke up again at 5 o'clock. My goal for that day was to reach Vukovar, a city at the border with Serbia. That meant riding over 200 kilometers. Vukovar was one of the transcontinental race checkpoints a few years ago. That race is what inspired me to ride my bike across borders, carrying the minimum necessary. The town holds significant historical value, as it was sieged for nearly 3 months during the Croatian War of Independence. Countless people died and countless more were displaced. The bullet holes are still visible today, not only in Vukovar, but also in the towns and villages within the region. In short, the water tower is kept as a symbol of people's resistance and perseverance. The following day, I headed straight to Serbia's capital, Belgrade. It was a rough day. The roads were straight, flat, and rather damaged. Most drivers were fine, but I was more on edge than usual, especially after avoiding several oncoming cars and buses. Once arrived in Belgrade, an old friend of mine showed me around the city. You can easily tell that it's been influenced by a number of cultures over centuries. It has its own unmistakable charm, and its hospitality is welcoming to all. I then left the Serbian capital, and I was excited to enter a country that's been on my mind for quite a while, Romania. I was warned left and right about several dangers of traveling in Romania, and so it wasn't with a certain level of stress that I crossed its border. Hey Pascal. So I just got to a hotel. It's a nice way to end a ride that is 180 kilometers. You know, the stray dogs concern, like it was less than 20 kilometers into Romania where I got chased by, I think, 2 stray dogs, yeah. And then I had to cycle through the night, of course, the last 40 kilometers. And as I was reaching the city, I was going uphill still, and I see like a dog walking around on the other side of the street. He stops, looks at me, then starts running right after me. Like I knew the dog wouldn't just let me pass. He would like start chasing me. So like I started shouting like no, and then I sped up. But because I shouted, all the other dogs got, you know, infuriated. So that was fun. But then I talked to the receptionist. He's a dog dresser, and he said that the best thing that you can do is to stop and face the dog. But like, you know, that's facing your fears. And with these words of advice, and with a fully rested mind and body, I was on the road once again. I love that Romania embraces so much of the Carpathian mountain range. You could easily find yourself to be on the road with almost no cars around, with cows chilling by the river. Navigating in Romania is fairly simple, given that there is a marker at each kilometer, indicating how many kilometers are left until the next town or city. Not all roads were as smooth as butter, but I learned to love riding rough roads. The next challenge I had in store for me was the Transfăgărășan. It is as impressive as it looks. Not too steep, fantastic views, and it gives you a strong feeling of achievement once you've climbed it. The lower side of the pass is deeply covered in forests, with some steeper sections. Hey, good luck. Then the road opens, clearing out the view over the valley. In the distance, you can see a waterfall. Once past the waterfall, the landscape becomes desolate, rocky, empty. You find yourself riding the spaghetti road, lacing the face of the mountain into the clouds. On the way down, the clouds cleared out, allowing me to take photos and videos of the beautiful, beautiful road. Then came the last definitive moment in Romania, the Bicaz Gorge. Because I grew up in Moldova, we went on several excursions to Romania, and most times we passed through this narrow road carved by the river and sheltered by the overhanging rocks. I was impressed each time I was there, including this time. Throughout my week in Romania, I realized how different one region to another can be. For example, the Transylvanian region had better kept roads, few stray dogs, and plenty of spots to eat and sleep. The villages were in better condition too. I even passed through several villages which were accommodated for rural tourism. Cycling there felt like going back into time. The last few days of my trip were difficult to digest. The high temperatures, the short but steep climbs, the uninspiring landscapes and decaying villages, these all left a sour impression. At the same time, I was excited to be home, so I kept pushing long distances each day. It wouldn't be a memorable trip if the last day was easy, and thankfully it wasn't. First, I took a shortcut, which turned out to be several kilometers of gravel. Don't ask me how I managed not to get a single puncture there. I even tried to get some water from the well myself. But it didn't go as planned. So I asked a professional. After crossing the border, Chisinau was only about 90 kilometers away. And out of the whole entire trip, this section felt the most difficult. To give you an idea, Moldova is a very hilly country. Its valleys are gorgeous, producing wine that competes at the European level. But the roads, unlike those found in the rest of Europe, tackle the hills as directly as possible, with very few twists and turns. Those steep hills killed me. Until, of course, I reached a vantage point where I could see the white post-Soviet buildings of Chisinau. With the newfound energy, I plowed through the remaining hills and reached the heart of the Moldovan capital. Feels good to be home again.